Aloha, I'm Lyla Berg. Mahalo for tuning in to Island Focus. We're broadcasting this program remotely again in respect of the health protocols, so you can meet the people who are reestablishing trust and purpose in Hawaii's travel industry. Thank you for joining us on Island Focus. Thank you for joining me in my conversation with John DeFries, the CEO of Hawaii Tourism Authority. Great to see you again, John.
Oh, Lyla, it's great to see you. It's been too long. Thank you for having me.
Where is HTA now? Where are we going? And what do you envision for the future of tourism as the travel industry opens up?
Sure. So when I arrived at HTA in mid-September, what was important to me was to arrive with an organizing principle in the form of a Hawaiian cultural value that would guide the work that we have before us. And that cultural value is mālama, to care for, to protect, to nurture. Day one, the staff here at HTA heard me talk about the mālama mindset. It required an elevated consciousness about the nature of our work, the importance of our work, and the fact that in a pandemic environment, caring for ourselves, caring for our families, our neighborhoods, our school districts are all central to us providing a safe environment for one day welcoming the visitors back at scale. At that point, we have an obligation to really mālama the visitor, but at the same time, educate the visitor on how to mālama us as a place, as a people, and as a society. Kind of principle and philosophy is now guiding the work, and I've been here for 5 months and couldn't feel more honored and privileged, actually.
Well, it's pretty exciting, actually, the impact and the influence that HTA can have on every island.
Beyond the economics of it, right? 216,000 employees in the visitor industry, ending 2019 with 10 million plus visitors, 2 billion in state tax revenue. You get all that economics out of the way, and it still comes down to the most fragile aspect is that we've got to be able to trust one another to get through this. The resident population has to be able to trust that industry leadership is not just trying to replicate the successes of the past, that there were impacts on our natural environments, there were impacts within our communities, there's been cultural degradation in certain areas. And so the industry, I believe, is aware of that, at least the leaders I work with, and now setting kind of a new course, because part of that success is our ability to come together as a community, to begin a healing process, because ultimately I believe that Hawaii will end up being recognized 10, 20, 30 years from now as a place of healing. Something cathartic happens to all of us when we come to Hawaii to vacation. We can't explain it all the time, but there's something connected to our culture, Hawaiian culture, multicultures, the Kama'aina way of life, the ability to coexist in relative harmony, certainly not perfect, but as we look across the nation today, Hawaii's example becomes more important to America and more important to the world.
And so how are the neighbor islands involved in this?
The Hawaii Tourism Authority Board adopted a strategic plan with 4 pillars: natural resources, Hawaiian culture, community, and branding. The outgrowth of that is a community engagement process where diverse groups are brought together on each major island, basically to give voice to that island, to explain to us and describe for us what would be a sustainable and regenerative model of tourism on your island that you believe will work and coexist appropriately with your island society. That's not easy work. The debates are intense. HTA says, can't you just stop the number of air seats? Can't you just stop the number of rent-a-cars? The fact is we live in a democracy and free enterprise. We have certain limitations. There are free market forces that we have to deal with, but I'm optimistic that the leadership throughout the state is on the front line, is proactive. Nobody's going to be a spectator in their community going forward. Everybody has an idea of what the future might look like that's best for their children, and HTA, the people at the legislature, the governor, have to be able to respond to what communities are calling for.
Well, it's very heartwarming to me to hear those words. And as we wrap up our conversation for today, short message to the public.
Don't depart from the things that we grew up, that we love the most. Aloha, as one cultural value, now has a sister value. It's called malama. We care for and protect the things we love.
Thank you very much. And our longtime friendship is something we'll protect as well. Thank you.
Absolutely. Good to see you, Lyla.
Mahalo for listening in on my conversation with John DeFries, who's the CEO of the Hawaiʻi Tourism Authority. On Island Focus today, I have the pleasure of talking with Avi Mannis, who is the Vice President of Marketing for Hawaiian Airlines. It's great to see you again, Avi, and to see that smile. So it must mean Hawaiian Airlines is doing okay.
Great to see you. Thank you for having me back. And yes, it is a time for more optimism than probably the last time we spoke.
Can you please share with us what are some of the lessons learned over these several months, and what do you envision for Hawaiian Airlines?
Well, it's been a time when we've learned a lot. And I think some of the things that we've taken away from this experience, first, how critically important it is for us as a company to take care of each other. That includes the management team thinking about how to take care of our frontline employees giving us feedback, really working together to figure out how we can best take care of our guests and keep our business operating, because like many businesses, we had to stay in operation through this entire period and learn and adapt. Certainly, another lesson was remaining engaged with our community stakeholders here. We're a company that flies all over the world, and sometimes I think it is easy for us to forget how important it is for us to remain grounded here in Hawaii and to remain engaged with our stakeholders at the local level. And a lot of the policy changes that really affected travel have happened at the county level recently. And so ensuring that we stay engaged with stakeholders, understand what's going on in individual communities, and understand how we can best respond to those needs has been important to us. And then I think maybe the last lesson I would take away from this is just how important it is to be guided by our sense of purpose and who we want to be as a company. So many of the decisions that we had to make in this period of time were financial decisions that were challenging. We really had to be guided not so much by the numbers on the page, but by who we were as a brand, who we were in this community, and the role we wanted to play. And so that's been really important for us as well.
It's kind of exciting, though, isn't it? I mean, to think about what's possible. And Hawaiian Airlines, by virtue of the name, is recognized all over the world as a representative of Hawaii.
The opportunity to go and do some really extraordinary things during this period of time has been a great one for our company. And one example that I'll talk about a little bit is just testing. The state has decided that it is important for people who travel here to be tested before they come so that we can keep our community safe. And all of a sudden, the challenge presented itself to us of how we could, as Hawaii's airline, make testing as affordable and accessible for people who wanted to travel as we possibly could. And we ended up setting up our own chain of testing labs. We now have our own proprietary testing labs, and I think 10 locations in the U.S. mainland. And that was something I would never have imagined as someone in management at an airline, that we would be running a chain of testing laboratories. But it was something we had to do to adapt to the moment and to make sure that we were not just operating commercially, but really making sure that as many people who came here were tested as possible. And that really depends on making it as easy and affordable as possible. So that was an opportunity and a moment where I think our team really rose to the challenge and were able to innovate in a really exciting way. But more than that, I think just how we represent Hawaii, the fact that we have Hawaiian in our name gives us some opportunities as a brand, but also some responsibilities. Since it's been very important for us over the course of this to help support other businesses in our community who have really been suffering over the course of the pandemic. And when we are talking to visitors about coming here, to make it very clear that while this is a very special time to visit Hawaii, I think it's actually a wonderful time to visit Hawaii. It comes with a set of responsibilities to ensure that visitors are keeping our community safe. And we've felt a very strong burden of responsibility to make sure that we were communicating that to the people who traveled on Hawaiian Airlines.
It must have elevated to the self-esteem and the reason for being part of Hawaiian Airlines with your employees.
I think that's true. We all live here for the most part. And so what happens in our community is of great consequence to all of us. And so I think we all felt a sense of collective responsibility, whether that was putting something on our website or whether that was individual flight attendants or guest services agents interacting with our guests and answering their questions about what they need to do to get tested or how they what they should do when they come here. It is an important part of our responsibility. As you said, it's also tremendously important that we let visitors feel welcomed back. Our economic recovery as a community is going to depend on the visitor industry, and diversification is important, but nothing will get the engine of our economy moving faster than we've spent the last year telling people justifiably that now is not the time to come to Hawaii, and there is a lot of work for all of us to do to make sure that our visitors feel welcomed back.
Parting words for our audience.
You know, as we start to look at the future and we're less worried about getting through each month, it is incredibly important that we all continue this dialogue that we've started over the course of COVID about how we grow our economy sustainably, how we make sure that we take the lessons over the last year and build them into having a more resilient economy and a more cohesive community.
Words of wisdom. Thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to flying on Hawaiian Airlines.
Well, we look forward to welcoming everyone back. Thank you. Mahalo.
We just spoke with Avi Mannis, who is the Vice President of Marketing for Hawaiian Airlines. Mahalo for tuning in to Island Focus and joining me in meeting Lori Dankers, who is the TSA spokesperson for Hawaii. Mahalo for being with us, Lori.
Mahalo, thank you so much for having me here.
So please share with us. TSA has undergone amazing changes over the years and definitely in the past year and several months. You keep changing to make sure that the public is safe. All the regulations are also met. What's the future of TSA, and where are you in helping Hawaii recover ourselves?
Absolutely. So this is a very important issue, not only for TSA, but I know for your community. So TSA has been on the job since day one of the pandemic to ensure that those who needed to travel were able to do so. And we made modifications to our procedures so that people would have a confidence that if they had to travel, the procedures in place would keep them safe and healthy, not only for the travelers, but for our employees, which are members of your community. They may be members of your family or friends of yours. So they're very important to us as well. And we know that you all together make a wonderful community. Now, TSA moving forward will continue to work with the community to ensure that we're serving you in the best way possible. I always like to say that any traveler, if they know what to expect when they come to the security checkpoint, what modifications are in place, if they know that prior to coming, they're going to have a much more successful trip through the security checkpoint, all without compromising security. And that's a very important element of what we do at TSA, and we are not going to let down on that mission at all.
And what are you finding as we move forward in the attitude of travelers?
Well, you know, many travelers, this is their first trip in months, if not a year. And so when they come to the checkpoint and they see new equipment, new technology in place, they see our officers wearing masks and face shields, they see acrylic barriers, that can be a little bit daunting because the checkpoint's already a little bit of a crowded environment, and then we've added new elements to it. But keep in mind, every modification that we have made is for the safety and the health of the traveling public as well as our employees. We know that the coronavirus has taken a toll. We can't ignore that, but what we can do is moving forward, make sure that we're taking every possible step. So here's what travelers will see when they come to the checkpoint. They're going to see our officers in full PPE, whether it's gloves, surgical masks, the face masks. They're going to see those acrylic barriers in any place where a traveler comes in close contact with the TSA officer. In addition, we have technologies in place. We're going to have TSA officers, for example, direct the traveler to scan their own boarding pass so there's no cross-contamination taking place. We're also going to have a new type of scanner that many travelers wouldn't have seen that creates a 3D image so that when we're doing the bag check, when it's being x-rayed, we have a better view of that bag. That's going to reduce the potential for you to have a TSA officer physically do the bag check for you. All of those items are intended to be a way to reduce potential cross-contamination between our employees and the travelers. Also, there's going to be extra cleaning in the checkpoint. The airport has generously funded that. So if you're thinking of traveling, if you're thinking that you need to make a trip by air, know that all these procedures are in place and TSA is standing by to ensure that you can do so safely and securely.
It's kind of exciting, isn't it? The changes that have emerged. Perhaps you were thinking about it anyway, but the whole health situation in the world has kind of compelled many businesses to step up and do some cool stuff.
That's very true. We had the technology on the in our future. We had made purchases of this, but we accelerated the deployment of it because we realized it had addressed this emerging need. And so you're absolutely right. It has caused us to make those changes, but they're going to be permanent in many ways because we realize that in a public space like that, we want to ensure that people can remain healthy post-pandemic as well. And I think everybody has learned a lot of lessons, and TSA is in fact one of those agencies that has learned those lessons and put them to good use and has made those modifications. And I'm actually glad about that. I travel too, and I'm pleased to see and to know when I'm going through the checkpoint that these are in place because it does help.
And I would suspect also or anticipate that the relationships among the employees have strengthened because of their own feeling of security working there.
Yes, absolutely. They have had to rely on each other more. They realize they are all in this together, no matter what community you're in, whether it's in the state of Hawaii or on the mainland. They've had to rely on each other. They've had to support their colleagues. They may be going through a difficult time, them personally or members of their family. And I've never seen the kind of kindness and generosity among our workforce because, as you know, oftentimes times like this, times of trial, times of difficulty really do bring people together and they learn so much more about each other. And I can tell you our workforce has risen to the occasion. And I think you'll notice that when you come through the checkpoint, you're going to see smile, you're going to see appreciation because keep in mind, our officers have a job because members of the public travel. And they're able to go ahead and pursue their interesting goal because of the traveling, the tourism industry in Hawaii. And for that, we're very grateful. And we look forward to being part of that solution moving forward.
Well, and thank you very much for your time. It warms my heart to hear you basically saying that aloha exists within TSA, regardless if the location is Hawaii or not. So thank you so much.
Yes, of course.
You've just met Lori Dankers, who is the TSA spokesperson for Hawaii. We have the opportunity today on Island Focus to meet Nicole Lin, who is the Director of Movers and Shakas. It's such a pleasure to make your acquaintance, Nicole. Thank you for taking the time to be with us and explain a little bit more about your program.
Thanks for having me, Lyla. I'm thrilled to be here and get to talk about Movers and Shakas. So Movers and Shakas is a program that aims to attract socially responsible remote workers, especially returning kama'aina, to come to Hawaii and actively contribute to our community. And there's really three key pillars of this program: people, economy, and caring for Hawaii. So as I mentioned, under people, we want to bring home returning kama'aina, as well as fresh perspectives to help invigorate our tech and innovation sectors and promote brain gain, and ideally build access to those high-paying, independent remote jobs that might be headquartered on the mainland. Under economy, this is a small pilot program, and we're really looking to test and learn on how to attract that more socially responsible, longer-term visitor that respects and shares Hawaii's values, and explore ways on how we as a program can best support a positive experience and impact on both the non-residents and our community. And then 3, caring for Hawaii. This is us really trying to create a shared stewardship for Hawaii's natural and cultural richness that hopefully our participants will take back home with them, whether they go back to the mainland or they stay home here in Hawaii. And we do that through cultural education. We're working with Native Hawaiian Hospitality Association. We're doing business communication training, as well as the volunteer component, which is a core piece of the program, which is our participants volunteering 15 plus hours every month with a local nonprofit or startup. That contribution piece is so important.
So when you speak about attracting a different kind of visitor, what does that mean?
Remote work has become so much more prevalent, and that has enabled a different type of visitor, someone who can stay longer, who can really become a contributing member of our community, and not just someone who's coming as a tourist to sit on the beach. We had nearly 90,000 applications for 50 spots. And that to me is a testament to how much people want to come and engage in a community, really contribute and have a local authentic experience.
I wonder if that's really true. I think they're looking at Hawaii as a destination,
Yeah, I mean, I think what was in the press was, the free round trip ticket. But, that is just, a very small obstacle to, you can just purchase the ticket yourself, right? The fact that there were so many applicants who had to go through a pretty rigorous application process was a huge testament to how much people want to contribute. And we were really looking for people who, one, had a full-time job that they could continue to do remotely, that shared and respected Hawaii's values, and were excited to come and share their professional skills and expertise with local nonprofits and businesses.
So what do you foresee in the future relative to your program, but also when we're talking about transforming or regenerating our economy? How does this play into that?
I think remote work, the future remote work, no one really knows what that's going to look like. Mm-hmm. But I think that it creates a lot of opportunities for Hawaii. And there's a lot of great organizations, programs, and businesses looking to help build a more resilient, more innovative, more sustainable Hawaii. And I'm excited to be one of those and work with other Hawaii programs as well, because we're all kind of headed towards the same goal. We want to make Hawaii a better place.
So as we wrap up our conversation just for today, words to the community, some words of hope, perhaps.
The pandemic has been hard, right, for our community, and I think it's given us a real opportunity to try different creative solutions. And something that I remind myself as a local who sometimes feels, resistance to change or feelings of anti-outsiderism is that this isn't a zero-sum game, that we can figure out ways that are mutually beneficial for our community, for people coming from the mainland or remote workers, for our environment, and for our economy.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to help us dream or envision what might be possible and what is going on at the moment. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Lyla. Mahalo.
Thank you for listening to my conversation with Nicole Lim, who's the Director of Movers and Shakas. Thank you for being with us today on Island Focus. I'm Lyla Berg. On behalf of the Island Focus crew and the entire team at Ōlelo Community Media, aloha and malama pono. Let's be kind to each other and continue to work for the well-being of Hawaii. See you soon.